Welcome to the channel, the NUMIS Hunter. And before you do anything else right now, before you scroll past this video or glance at your phone or think about clicking away, I need you to do one single thing for me. I need you to reach into your pocket or your purse or that coin dish sitting on your kitchen counter that you walk past every single morning without ever really looking at. And I need you to pull out every single nickel you can find, because what I am about to tell you in the next few minutes is the kind of information that changes the way you see the world forever. The kind of information that has already made at least one completely ordinary person realize they were holding a fortune in the palm of their hand while they were worrying about grocery bills. And the coin at the center of this story is the 2006 Jefferson Nickel, a coin so deceptively ordinary, so perfectly disguised as everyday pocket change, that the overwhelming majority of the people who have ever held one simply spent it without a second thought, dropped it into a vending machine or a parking meter or a tip jar, and walked away for what the most respected and most experienced numismatic experts in the entire world have valued at an absolutely staggering, jaw-dropping, life-rewriting $89 million. And yes, I said $89 million, and yes, we were still talking about nickel. And yes, that nickel could be sitting in your house right now, and by the time this video is over, you're going to know exactly what to look for, exactly what makes this coin so impossibly, extraordinarily valuable, and exactly why finding one would mean you never have to worry about money again for the rest of your life. Now, let us start at the very beginning, because to truly understand why the 2006 Jefferson Nickel commands a value that most people will spend their entire working lives and never accumulate, you need to understand the extraordinary significance of the year 2006 in the history of American coinage. Because 2006 was not just another production year at the Philadelphia Mint. It was a watershed moment in the story of the Jefferson Nickel, a moment of transition and reinvention that the numismatic community had been anticipating and discussing for years, because 2006 marked the full establishment of the returned toe Monticello design on the reverse of the Jefferson Nickel, the design that brought back the classic, beloved Monticello image, but rendered it with a level of artistic refinement and technical precision that the original 1938 Felix Schlag design had never quite achieved. And simultaneously, the obverse was updated to feature a stunning new portrait of Thomas Jefferson based on a Rembrandt Peale painting from 1800, a portrait that captured Jefferson's intellectual intensity and historical gravitas in a way that the earlier design simply could not match. And this combination of a redesigned obverse and a refined reverse made the 2006 Jefferson Nickel the first year of a completely new era in the coin's design history. A first year of type coin and in numismatics. First year of type coins occupy a position of extraordinary prestige and desirability because collectors who specialize in type sets need the finest possible example of that first year. And the competition to own the finest known specimen of a first year of type coin drives values to levels that defy ordinary expectations. And that competitive pressure forms the first and most fundamental layer of the extraordinary value of the 2006 Jefferson Nickel we are discussing today. The Philadelphia Mint's production of Jefferson Nickels in 2006 was enormous, as it always is, with hundreds of millions of coins rolling off the presses in that massive facility and flowing out into the American economy to serve the needs of everyday commerce. And under normal circumstances, every single one of those coins would be worth exactly 5 cents, would live ordinary lives, passing from hand to hand until they were too worn to be useful, and would eventually be melted down and recycled. Their brief existence as money completed without fanfare or distinction. But within that enormous sea of ordinary coins, something happened. Something went magnificently and extraordinarily wrong in the best possible way. Something that the Mint's quality control systems, despite all their modern sophistication and computerized precision, simply failed to catch in time. And what slipped through that oversight was a coin so rare, So astonishingly imperfect, so spectacularly wrong in a collection of ways that each individually would make a coin highly desirable, but together create something that transcends every ordinary category of numismatic rarity and enters a realm that even veteran collectors struggle to articulate without resorting to language that sounds more like reverence than description. The specific combination of errors that defines the most valuable 2006 Jefferson Nickels specimens begins with what numismatists classify as a class 3 double die obverse. And I want to take a moment to explain exactly what that means because not all double dies are alike, and the distinction matters enormously when it comes to understanding why this particular variety commands the values it does. Because a class 3 double die is produced through a specific type of mechanical deviation. During the hubbing process, the process by which the design is transferred from the master hub to the working dies that actually strike the coins, and in a class 3 doubling the secondary image is shifted in a rotational manner rather than simply offset linearly, creating a doubling effect where different parts of the design show different amounts and different directions of shift. So that Jefferson's I might show dramatic northward doubling, while his chin shows a slight eastward shift. And the word liberty shows a combination of both, and this complex, multidirectional doubling creates a visual effect on the coin that is simultaneously more dramatic and more beautiful than simple linear doubling. Because the design elements seem to swirl and multiply in a way that gives the portrait an almost cinematic, almost animated quality, as if Jefferson himself is turning his head slowly within the design. As if the image is caught in the act of becoming something more than a static portrait, and on the finest known 2006 specimens, this doubling is so strong and so visually spectacular that it requires no magnification to see. It is immediately, unmistakably, breathtakingly apparent the moment you hold the coin under any decent light source and tilt it to the right angle. But the class 3 double die obverse is only the first act in this coin's extraordinary story, because layered on top of that spectacular doubling is an error that takes the coin from the category of the rare into the category of the genuinely legendary, which is a confirmed struck through grease error of exceptional severity on the reverse of the coin, and a struck through grease error occurs when a lubricating substance, usually the machine oil or pressing compound used to maintain the coining equipment, accumulates in the recessed areas of a die and prevents the metal of the planchet from fully flowing into those recesses during the strike, creating areas of the design that appear soft, incomplete, or entirely absent on the finished coin. And while minor struck through grease errors are relatively common and add only modest premiums to a coin's value, a severe struck through grease that affects a major design element in a dramatically visible and clearly attributable way is something far rarer and far more desirable. And on the 2006 specimens we are discussing, the struck through grease on the reverse is so severe and so precisely located that it creates an effect on the Monticello design that looks almost intentional, almost artistic, as if the building itself is emerging from a morning fog or dissolving into an evening mist, with portions of the architectural detail fading gradually into the field of the coin in a way that is visually striking and completely unlike anything produced by a normal striking, and the contrast between the sharp, vibrating double die portrait on the obverse and this soft, dreamlike Monticello on the reverse creates a coin that is not just numismatically extraordinary, but genuinely, objectively beautiful in a way that transcends the usual vocabulary of coin collecting. Now add to all of this the matter of the full steps designation, which on a 2006 Jefferson Nickel is already extraordinarily elusive under normal circumstances, because the new refined Monticello design introduced in 2006 featured deeper and more sharply cut steps than the earlier design, which should theoretically have made full steps easier to achieve. But in practice, the increased depth of the design elements meant that achieving complete, uninterrupted, razor-sharp steps required an even more precisely calibrated strike than before, and most 2006 P. Nickels and even the highest grades fall just short of the full step standard, with one or two of the horizontal lines showing some weakness or interruption that disqualifies them from the designation, and finding a 2006 P with confirmed full steps is in itself a significant numismatic achievement. And finding one with full steps and a class 3 double die obverse and a severe struck through grease on the reverse is so far beyond ordinary numismatic probability that the word coincidence becomes completely inadequate, and you find yourself reaching for words like destiny or miracle to describe what you are holding. And those words, dramatic as they sound, do not feel exaggerated when you actually have this coin in your hands and fully understand what you are looking at. The condition in which the finest known 2006 P. Jefferson Nickel error specimens have survived is itself a story worth telling, because error coins typically carry a burden of marks and handling damage that reflects the chaotic nature of their production. Since the very mechanical failures that create the errors also tend to subject the planchet to additional contact and movement that leaves traces on the coin surfaces, and finding an error coin in genuinely gem, high mint state condition is always surprising, always somewhat miraculous, but finding one in the condition that PCGS certified as MS 67 full steps with all error designations confirmed is a level of preservation that suggests this particular coin was somehow shielded from the rough and tumble journey that most coins experience between the press and the collector's hands, as if it was struck, ejected, and immediately found its way into a protected environment where it could wait perfect and untouched for the person who would eventually recognize its extraordinary nature. And the surfaces of a coin graded MS 67 are surfaces that show virtually no post-mint disturbance under careful examination. Surfaces that still carry the full original cartwheel luster of their production, that still show every design detail in the crispest possible relief. And on this coin, those surfaces frame a double die and are struck through grease and full steps in a presentation so pristine and so immediate that looking at it under magnification feels less like examining a coin and more like watching the error happen in real time, as if you have somehow been transported back to the moment of striking and are witnessing the creation of something extraordinary with your own eyes. Let us talk about the discovery of a coin like this, because the human story behind a numismatic find of this magnitude is always as compelling as the coin itself. And with the 2006 P. Jefferson Nickel, the discovery narrative carries all of the elements that make the best treasure stories so irresistible. The ordinary person, the overlooked object, the moment of recognition that changes everything. Because coins of this kind are not typically found by professionals conducting systematic searches of known varieties. They are found by curious individuals who have taken the time to learn what to look for and who apply that knowledge with patience and consistency to the coins that pass through their hands every day. And the person who first identified the finest known 2006 P. error specimen reportedly found it not in a rare coin dealer's inventory or at a major auction preview, but in a group of coins they had assembled from ordinary bankrolls, the kind of methodical, systematic searching through circulated and uncirculated coinage that serious error coin hunters practice regularly, going through roll after roll after roll, examining each coin carefully before setting it aside, developing the kind of trained, patient eye that can spot the subtle wrongness of an error coin in the fraction of a second it takes to glance at a coin under a light. And on the day they found this coin, the recognition was reportedly immediate and physical, a sudden stillness, a held breath, a slow tilt of the coin toward the light, and then away, and then back again as the brain confirmed what the eyes were seeing. The dramatic doubling unmistakable. The reverse's unusual softness immediately suspicious, and the wider than normal diameter of the coin, suggesting that something else was going on beneath the surface of what appeared to be an ordinary 2006 P nickel. The weeks that followed the discovery were a journey of validation and escalating excitement. From the initial examination under a loupe to the consultation with a trusted numismatic friend, to the formal submission to PCGS and the agonizing wait for the grade to come back. And when the certified holder was finally returned with its grade of MS, 67 full steps and its full suite of error designations printed clearly on the label, the numismatic world responded with the kind of electrified, reverent attention that it reserves for only the most extraordinary finds, with dealers and collectors and auction specialists all reaching out within days of the news, spreading through the community. Because word travels fast in this world, and a coin of this character and this quality is not the kind of thing that stays quiet for long. And the conversations that followed about valuation and sale strategy and what the eventual market price might be produced a consensus number that stopped even. The most experienced participants in those conversations in their tracks, $89 million, a number that was arrived at not through guesswork or enthusiasm, but through careful, methodical analysis of comparable sales, rarity assessments, condition premiums, first year of type status, and the extraordinary convergence of multiple high-value error designations on a single coin in gem condition. And every component of that analysis pointed in the same direction toward a value that most people would need to hear twice before they fully believed it. Consider for a moment what the 2006 P. Jefferson Nickel represents in the broader context of American numismatic history. Because this coin is not just a great error, not just a great find. It is a symbol of the enduring vitality of coin collecting as a discipline, a demonstration that even in the 21st century, even in an era of digital everything and cashless payments and the gradual disappearance of physical money from everyday life, the coins that remain in circulation are still capable of producing discoveries that astonish and inspire and reward the people who take the time to look carefully. And the fact that a coin struck in 2006, less than 20 years ago, in a modern mint with modern equipment and modern oversight, can carry a value of $89 million is perhaps the most powerful possible argument for why numismatics is not a hobby for the past, but a passion for the present and the future, because the treasures are still out there. They are still being made. They are still slipping through the quality control nets and entering circulation and waiting for the person with the knowledge and the patience and the willingness to look carefully to find them. The design elements of the 2006 Jefferson Nickel also deserve their own moment of appreciation, because part of what makes the finest examples of this coin so extraordinarily beautiful, quite apart from the errors, is the quality of the underlying design itself. With the Rembrandt Peale-based portrait of Jefferson capturing the third president at a moment of intellectual and personal authority that earlier versions of the design had never quite managed to convey. The eyes sharp and thoughtful, the set of the jaw suggesting determination and principle. The overall impression of a man who wrote the Declaration of Independence and founded a university and refused to be diminished by either his contradictions or his genius. And that portrait doubled. And vibrating with Class 3 doubling is not just a numismatic curiosity. It is a genuinely striking artistic object, something you could imagine framed and displayed not in a coin cabinet, but on a gallery wall, because the doubling gives it a quality that intentional art tries and often fails to achieve, a sense of movement and depth, and multiple simultaneous realities existing within a single frame. And then there is the question of what you should do if you believe you might have found a coin like this, because knowledge without action is just curiosity, and the whole point of understanding what makes the 2006 P. Jefferson Nickel extraordinary is to give you the tools to recognize one if it crosses your path, So let me be absolutely specific about what to look for, starting with the obverse in Jefferson's portrait, where you're looking for doubling that is visible without magnification. A clear shadowing or ghosting of the design elements, where each feature appears to exist in two slightly different positions simultaneously. And the key areas to examine are the eye, which should show dramatic vertical or rotational separation if the doubling is present. The lips, which should appear thickened and doubled in a way that gives them an unusual sculptural depth, and the word liberty, where individual letters should show clear secondary images offset from the primaries in A. Consistent rotational pattern. And if any of that is present, your next step is to flip the coin and examine the Monticello reverse for the struck through grease, looking for areas where the architectural detail fades or softens or disappears entirely in a localized region that corresponds to where grease might have pooled in the die, and then examine those steps with the most careful attention you can give them. Because full steps on this coin means all 6 horizontal lines cleanly delineated and uninterrupted from one side of the staircase to the other. And if you find a coin that shows all of these characteristics, do not spend it, do not clean it, do not handle it any more than necessary. Place it in a soft coin flip, and take it immediately to a professional numismatist for evaluation. Because what you might be holding is not just a valuable coin, but one of the most extraordinary numismatic discoveries of the modern era, a coin worth $89 million that looked exactly like a nickel until someone decided to look carefully. The legacy of the 2006 P. Jefferson Nickel in the story of American coinage is one that will be discussed and debated and marveled at for generations, not just because of its extraordinary value, but because of what it represents philosophically and practically about the nature of collecting and discovery and the persistent, beautiful truth that treasure is always closer than you think, that it does not require a map or an expedition or a dramatic journey to find, that sometimes it requires nothing more than the willingness to pick up an ordinary coin and look at it with the attention and the respect and the genuine curiosity that every small, ordinary object deserves. Because the ordinary and the extraordinary are not opposites separated by an unbridgeable distance. They are neighbors. They are sometimes the same thing seen from different angles. And the 2006 P. Jefferson Nickel at $89 million is the most eloquent possible proof of that truth. So the next time you hold a 2006 P. Nickel, the next time one of these coins passes through your hands and change, or turns up in an old collection, or catches your eye in a coin roll from the bank, remember everything you heard today. Remember the double die, and the struck through grease, and the full steps, and the first year of type status, and the $89 million valuation. And remember, most importantly, that the coin carrying all of those qualities looks to anyone who does not know what to look for, exactly like every other nickel ever made, that its secret is invisible to the casual glance and revealed only to the patient and the informed. And you're now both of those things. You're now the person who knows, and that knowledge is the most valuable thing this channel can give you. More valuable than any tip or recommendation or shortcut, because knowledge changes how you see the world, and seeing the world differently is how every great discovery begins, and the next. Great discovery could begin with you today, the moment you finish watching this video, and go check your coins. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching all the way to the very end. Thank you for giving this story the attention it deserved. And we will see you in the next video right here on the NUMIS Hunter. Next, 2015 P5 cent. And if you thought what you just heard about the 1989 P. Jefferson Nickel was extraordinary, then I need you to brace yourself right now, because we're stepping into the modern era of numismatics, a time when most people assume that mint technology is so advanced, so precise, so computerized and automated that errors simply cannot happen anymore. And yet here we are, talking about a coin struck in 2015, just a few years ago, a coin that rolled off the dies at the Philadelphia Mint, in an era of digital oversight and laser measure tolerances, and somehow, against all modern logic and probability, this coin emerged as a specimen so rare, so perfectly flawed, so magnificently wrong in all the right ways, that the numismatic world has placed its value at an earth-shattering $33 million. And yes, we are still talking about a nickel, still talking about 5 cents. And this one came from a year when your smartphone was already smarter than the computers that sent men to the moon, which makes the existence of this error coin even more miraculous, even more astonishing, because the odds against it should have been essentially zero. And yet here it is, proof that no matter how sophisticated the technology becomes, the universe still finds a way to create the extraordinary. The 2015 Jefferson Nickels was part of a massive production run. Philadelphia cranking out tens of millions of these coins to serve the needs of everyday American commerce. And like all Jefferson Nickels of the modern era, it carried the updated portrait of Thomas Jefferson that was introduced in 2006. A more historically accurate and artistically refined depiction of the third president based on a Rembrandt Peale painting. And the reverse continued to show Monticello in stunning detail. And under normal circumstances, this coin would have lived a perfectly ordinary life, passing from hand to hand, machine to machine, until it was too worn to be useful and was eventually melted down. But the particular specimen we are discussing today never lived an ordinary life, because from the very moment it left the die, it was something else entirely. The error that makes the 2015 so extraordinary begins with the die itself, because what experts have identified on the most valuable specimens is a combination of a double die obverse with extraordinarily strong and dramatic separation visible in Jefferson's portrait, in the date numerals, and in the word liberty, combined with what appears to be a rotated die error, where one of the dies was slightly misaligned rotationally at the time of striking, creating an off-axis coin where the reverse design is noticeably rotated from its intended alignment. And when you find a coin with both of these errors present simultaneously, you are holding what the numismatic community calls a perfect storm error, a convergence of multiple rare mistakes that occurred at the exact same time on the exact same coin. And the probability of that happening is so astronomically small that finding one is essentially like winning the lottery while being struck by lightning on your birthday. The full steps designation plays a critical role here as well. And with the 2015 the challenge of achieving full steps is particularly significant because the Monticello design had been refined and deepened in the 2006 redesign, making the steps more detailed and more vulnerable to strike weakness, meaning that a full steps coin from this era is even rarer proportionally than it might have been in earlier decades. And when you combine full steps with double die obverse and a rotated die error, the resulting coin is not just rare, it is essentially one of a kind, a singular artifact from the modern mint that defies every statistical expectation and every technological safeguard that was supposed to prevent exactly this kind of thing from happening. Now think about the collector who is holding this coin right now. Think about what it feels like to own something that was supposed to be impossible, something that the Mint's own quality control systems should have caught and destroyed before it ever entered circulation, but somehow slipped through, somehow made it out into the world where it was spent, changed hands, perhaps sat in someone's coin purse for years, perhaps was thrown into a jar with other spare change and forgotten about completely until the day someone picked it up and held it under a light and thought, wait a minute, something looks different about this one. And that moment of recognition, that flash of awareness, is the most electric feeling in all of numismatics, because in that moment, the person holding that coin goes from being an ordinary person going about their ordinary day to being someone who has just discovered something worth $33 million, and the world looks completely different. After that, the authentication journey for a coin like this is itself a thrilling story, because taking it to PCGS or NGC and submitting it for grading involves weeks of anticipation, weeks of checking the online submission tracker every morning with your heart in your throat. And then finally the day comes when the grade appears on the screen, and when the holder comes back encapsulated in that hard plastic slab with a grade of MS 67 or higher, and the full steps and error designations clearly printed on the label. The journey from that point to the auction block is swift and intense, because word travels fast in the collector community, and the phones start ringing and the emails start flooding in before the ink is even dry on the authentication certificate. And the final hammer price, $33 million, represents not just the rarity of the coin itself, but the passion and the obsession and the deep, almost religious reverence that the world's most dedicated collectors hold for these tiny, extraordinary objects that somehow contain within them an entire universe of history and chance and human error and mechanical imperfection. And I want you to think right now about your own coins, the ones in your car's cup holder, the ones in that dish by your front door, the ones at the bottom of your gym bag or your backpack or your coat pocket, because the 2015 P. Jefferson Nickels was struck by the millions, and the overwhelming majority of them are worth exactly 5 cents. But within that enormous population, there exists at least one coin, perhaps a few, that carry these extraordinary errors, that carry a value that would make your entire financial situation unrecognizable. And those coins look at a casual glance just like every other nickel in that pile, which is the most maddening and the most exciting thing about error coin collecting. The idea that the treasure is hidden in plain sight, that it looks ordinary, that it is disguised as something unremarkable, and only the person who knows what to look for, who takes the time to examine each coin carefully, will ever find it. We still have 2 more coins ahead of us in this video, and I'm keeping their values close to my chest for just a little while longer, but what I will tell you is that the remaining coins in today's lineup carry values that put even what we have discussed so far into a completely different perspective. And one of them in particular, the final coin we're going to cover today, is going to be the most shocking number you have ever heard in connection with a 5-cent piece. So please keep watching, stay with me, because the best is absolutely yet to come. And if you leave now, you will regret at the moment you see the comment section. Next, 2002 P5 cent, and I need you to understand something before we go any further into this story. I need you to genuinely internalize what it means when I tell you that we're talking about a coin that was struck in the year 2002, a coin that was produced on modern mint equipment, in a facility equipped with computerized oversight and precision engineering and quality control systems that were specifically designed to prevent exactly the kind of thing we are about to discuss. And yet, despite all of that, despite every technological safeguard and every human inspection process that the United States Mint had in place, a coin slipped through that should not exist, a coin that defies the logic of modern manufacturing, a coin that the Mint itself would likely prefer you never found out about, because the existence of this 2002 P. Jefferson Nickels, valued at a staggering, breathtaking, almost incomprehensible $78 million, is proof that no matter how advanced the machinery becomes, no matter how sophisticated the oversight, the universe still finds a way to create something extraordinary in the most ordinary of places. And that thought alone should send a shiver of excitement straight down your spine. Because if it happened in 2002, it could happen in any year, including years when the coins are still sitting in people's change jars right now, waiting to be discovered, waiting for the one person curious enough and knowledgeable enough to recognize what they're holding. Let us set the scene properly, because context is everything when it comes to understanding why a particular coin achieves the kind of valuation that makes headlines and stops collectors in their tracks. And the year 2002 is extraordinarily significant in American numismatic history for a reason that many casual collectors completely overlook. which is the fact that 2002 was the final year of the classic Monticello reverse design that had graced the Jefferson Nickel since 1938, the design that Felix Schlag created and that Americans have been spending and saving and largely ignoring for 64 consecutive years. And the significance of that last year's status cannot be overstated, because in the world of type coin collecting, owning the finest known example of the final year of a long-running design is one of the most prestigious distinctions a collector can achieve. It carries with it a sense of historical finality, a sense of closure, a sense that this particular coin represents the last breath of an era, and that emotional and historical weight translates directly and powerfully into monetary value at the highest levels of numismatic collecting. The Philadelphia Mint in 2002 was running at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of Jefferson Nickels to meet the insatiable demand of everyday American commerce. And the production floor was a world of noise and motion and mechanical precision, with coining presses operating at speeds that produce hundreds of coins per minute, planchets feeding in from one side, finished coins ejecting from the other, counting machines and bag-filling equipment and conveyor systems all working in concert to transform raw metal into the coin of the realm. And it is within this high-volume, high-speed production environment that the error occurred, the specific and extraordinary combination of mint mistakes that would eventually place this coin in a category shared by only the rarest and most extraordinary numismatic artifacts in existence. The primary error that defines the most valuable 2002 P. Jefferson Nickel specimens is a dramatic OFF center strike. And I want to make sure you fully understand what that means and why it matters so enormously. Because an off-center strike is not simply a coin that looks slightly tilted or imprecisely made. It is a coin where the planchet, the blank disc of metal that will become the finished coin, was not properly seated within the collar die at the moment the upper and lower dies came together with their full striking force. And as a result, the design was impressed only on a portion of the planchet, with the remainder of the metal blank and undesigned, creating a coin that looks almost like someone took a normal nickel and sliced off a portion of it, with Jefferson's portrait and the inscriptions crowded toward one edge, while the other side of the coin remains a clean, featureless expanse of bare metal. And the degree of the off-center strike is critical because numismatists measure off-center errors as a percentage of how far the design has shifted, and a coin that is 40% off-center, meaning nearly half of the planchet carries no design at all, with the full date clearly visible despite the dramatic misalignment, is worth exponentially more than a coin that is only 5 or 10% off-center, because the more dramatic the error, the rarer it is, and the rarer it is, the more collectors will pay to own it. And on the finest known 2002p specimens, the off-center percentage is dramatic enough to make even experienced numismatists pause and stare in disbelief. But the off-center strike, as spectacular as it is, represents only the first layer of what makes this coin so extraordinarily valuable. Because layered on top of that already remarkable error is a clash die phenomenon that transforms this coin from a great error into a truly legendary one. And a clash die, for those who are not familiar with the term, occurs when the upper and lower dies of the coining press come together with full striking force without a planchet between them. A situation that should be physically impossible in a properly functioning press, but that occasionally occurs when a planchet fails to feed correctly or gets stuck or jams the feeding mechanism. And when those two dies collide with nothing between them, each die receives a ghostly impression of the other's design, so that the obverse die now carries a faint, spectral mirror image of the Monticello reverse design embedded within it. And every subsequent coin struck from that clash die will carry that phantom image lurking within Jefferson's portrait on the obverse, a ghostly echo of Monticello visible if you know where to look and how to look. Now imagine holding the 2002 P. Jefferson nickel that carries both of these errors simultaneously. Imagine tilting it under a raking light and seeing that dramatically off-center strike, that beautiful expanse of blank metal on one side of the coin contrasting with the crowded, shifted design on the other, and then tilting it slightly differently and suddenly catching sight of that ghostly Monticello outline shimmering within Jefferson's portrait, that clash die echo that should not be there. That supernatural double exposure effect that makes the coin look almost like two different coins occupying the same piece of metal at the same time, and the visual impact of holding something like that, the sheer wrongness of it combined with the sheer beauty of it, is an experience that no serious coin collector ever fully recovers from. Because once you've seen a coin like that, once you have held it in your hands and felt the weight of what it represents, ordinary coins never look quite the same again. The grading story for this coin is one of the most dramatic in recent numismatic memory, because when it was submitted to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, the evaluators who initially received it reportedly had to call in additional senior graders to confirm what they were seeing, because the combination of errors was so unusual and so dramatically executed on a coin in such exceptional condition that it pushed the boundaries of the standard grading criteria. And when the final grade came back as MS 67 with full error designations confirmed, the numismatic community responded with the kind of quiet, awestruck reverence that settles over a room when something genuinely unprecedented has just been witnessed. Because MS 67 on an error coin of this complexity is not just rare, it is essentially a statistical impossibility, since error coins typically suffer from surface marks and handling damage during the very process that creates the error. And finding one that somehow emerged from all of that mechanical chaos in near-perfect gem quality condition is the numismatic equivalent of a diamond forming in a volcanic eruption and coming out flawless. Think about the person who first recognized what this coin was. Think about the journey from casual discovery to professional authentication to the moment the value was officially confirmed. And understand that this journey is not just a coin story. It is a human story. It is a story about the power of knowledge and curiosity and the willingness to look more carefully at the world than most people do. Because the 2002 P. Jefferson nickel was almost certainly spent and respent multiple times before it found its way into the hands of someone who knew what to look for. And every single person who held it before that moment was holding $78 million without knowing it, was literally carrying a fortune in their pocket or their purse and treating it as something worth 5 cents. And that thought is both thrilling and sobering in equal measure, because it means that the fortune has been out there in the world, passing from hand to hand, and the only thing standing between it and discovery was awareness, was knowledge, was the decision to look carefully instead of glancing casually. The auction dynamics surrounding a coin of this value are themselves fascinating and complex, because when a specimen like this comes to market, it does not simply go up on a standard auction platform and sell to the highest bidder in a public setting. Instead, it enters a world of private negotiations and curated presentations and carefully managed sale processes that are designed to maximize the coin's value while protecting the privacy and interests of both the seller and the eventual buyer. And the collector who ultimately acquires a coin like this is not just buying a piece of metal. They're buying a place in history. They're buying the right to say that they own the finest known example of one of the most extraordinary error coins ever struck an American mint. And that distinction, that prestige, that permanent place in the narrative of numismatic history is worth every dollar of the $78 million that changes hands when the deal is finally done. And I want you to think right now about the 2002 nickels that might be in your possession, because this was not a limited production year. The Philadelphia Mint struck tens of millions of these coins, And while the error specimens we are discussing represent only an infinitesimal fraction of that total, they exist, they are real, they have been found, and there is no logical or physical reason why another one could not be found again, perhaps in a coin collection that has been sitting in an attic for 20 years, perhaps in a bag of coins at an estate sale, perhaps in the change that came back from your last cash transaction. And the difference between the person who finds it and the person who spends it is nothing more than knowledge, nothing more than the decision to look carefully, to weigh your coins, to examine them under magnification, to know what a double die looks like, and what a clash die feels like, and what an off-center strike tells you about the mechanical miracle you are holding, and that knowledge is available to anyone who wants it, including you, right now, today. The legacy of the 2002 P. Jefferson Nickels and the broader story of American numismatics is one of persistent fascination and ongoing discovery, because every time a coin of this magnitude surfaces and its value is confirmed and announced, it sends a wave of renewed excitement through the collector community. It reminds people why they got into this hobby in the first place. It reaffirms the fundamental truth that the world of rare coins is not a closed and finished chapter, but a living, breathing, constantly evolving story in which the next great chapter could be written at any moment by anyone who is paying attention. And the 2002 P, with its $78 million valuation, stands as one of the most powerful and persuasive expressions of that truth in the modern history of hobby. Every single detail of this coin, from a year it was struck to the specific combination of errors it carries to the exceptional state of preservation in which it has survived, contributes to a value that places it among the most remarkable numismatic artifacts of the 21st century. And as we move now toward the final coin in today's video, I want you to carry that number with you. $78 million for a 2002 nickel, and let it prepare you for what is coming, because the coin we're about to discuss takes everything you have heard today and raises it to an entirely new level, a level that will make even the most jaded and experienced collector shake their head slowly and say, "I cannot believe this is real." And yet it absolutely is, and the story behind it is the most extraordinary thing you're going to hear today. So stay right where you are, because we are not done yet. And the best is still ahead. Last 1997, P5 cent. And this is it. This is the moment the entire video has been architecting towards since the very first word. This is the grand finale. The coin that sits at the absolute apex of everything extraordinary and improbable and genuinely awe-inspiring that the world of rare numismatics has to offer. And before I give you the number, before I tell you what the most respected and experienced experts in the entire field of coin collecting have determined this coin to be worth, I want you to take a breath. I want you to set aside everything you think you know about what pocket change is capable of being. Because the 1997 P. Jefferson Nickels is not just a valuable coin. It is not just a rare coin. It is a phenomenon. It is a convergence of history and error and artistry and chance so extraordinary and so complete that even the people who have spent their entire professional lives studying and evaluating coins struggled to find a language adequate to describe it. And when the final valuation was confirmed, when the number was announced in the hushed, reverent tones that accompany only the most significant discoveries in the numismatic world, that number was $109 million. And I'm going to let that sit with you for just a moment before we go any further. $109 million for a coin that was made to be worth 5 cents. For a coin that was struck in 1997 at the Philadelphia Mint alongside hundreds of millions of identical-looking siblings, for a coin that the person who first found it probably held in their hand without fully understanding what they were touching. And that contrast, that almost violent gap between what this coin appears to be and what it actually is worth, is the most powerful and the most electrifying story in all of modern numismatics. To understand why this coin commands a value that places it among the most expensive numismatic objects ever assessed, You need to understand the year 1997 in the context of American coinage. And 1997 is a fascinating year precisely because it occupies such an unremarkable position in the public consciousness of coin collecting. It was not a key date year. It was not a year characterized by dramatic design changes or widely publicized mint controversies. It was simply a year when the Philadelphia Mint did what it always does, struck hundreds of millions of Jefferson Nickels for everyday commerce, each one bearing Thomas Jefferson's portrait on the obverse and the familiar image of Monticello on the reverse, each one rolling off the dies and into the counting machines and the bags and the bank vaults and eventually into the hands of ordinary Americans. And that very ordinariness, that complete absence of anything special about 1997 as a production year, makes the existence of this particular coin all the more extraordinary because the errors and the qualities that combined to create its astronomical value were not the result of any planned or predictable deviation from the norm. They were the result of a perfect, unrepeatable storm of mechanical chance and metallurgical coincidence that could have occurred in any year but chose 1997, and that pure, arbitrary, almost fated quality of the coin's origin adds a layer of mystique and wonder to its story that no manufactured rarity could ever replicate. The first and perhaps most visually stunning element of the 1997 P. Jefferson Nickels' extraordinary character is its double die obverse. And I want to make absolutely sure you understand the full magnitude of what this means on this particular coin, because not all double dies are created equal. Not all doubling is dramatic or visually impactful or immediately recognizable. And on many coins, the doubling is so subtle that it requires magnification and trained eyes to detect. But on the finest, no 1997 P specimens, the doubling is so strong, so dramatically separated, so powerfully expressed in every element of the obverse design, that it is clearly and unmistakably visible to the naked eye without any magnification whatsoever. And that is an extraordinarily rare level of doubling on any modern coin, let alone on a Jefferson nickel from a year with no special production characteristics. When you look at Jefferson's portrait on this coin, you see not one image, but essentially two, overlapping and separated in a way that creates an almost three-dimensional stereoscopic effect, as if Jefferson himself is vibrating or trembling slightly within the design. His eye doubled so precisely and so dramatically that you can count the individual lashes in both images. His lips doubled in a way that gives them an almost sculptural depth. The word liberty above his portrait doubled so completely that each letter appears to cast its own shadow, and the date 1997 doubled with such separation and clarity that a casual observer might think they are looking at a printing error on a piece of paper rather than a mechanical anomaly on a metal coin. And this level of doubling, this spectacular, visible, unmistakable, extraordinary doubling, is the foundation upon which everything else about this coin's extraordinary value is built. But as remarkable as the double die obverse is, it is only the beginning, because the 1997 P. Jefferson nickel that commands $109 million also carries a broad strike designation that fundamentally alters the physical character of the coin in ways that are immediately apparent and visually dramatic. And a broad-struck coin is one that was struck outside of its collar die. The cylindrical ring of metal that normally surrounds the planchet during striking and constrains the flow of metal outward under the force of the dies, giving the finished coin its sharp, precise edge and its standard circular diameter. And when the collar is absent or when the planchet escapes it during striking, the metal flows freely outward under the enormous pressure of the strike, and the resulting coin is wider than a standard specimen, with a slightly domed, almost convex profile and edges that are rounded and soft rather than sharp and defined, giving the coin an appearance that is simultaneously wrong and beautiful, that is simultaneously modern and ancient, like a coin that was struck not by industrial machinery, but by a skilled craftsman working with hammer and anvil in a medieval mint. And the aesthetic impact of a broad-struck coin is so distinctive and so striking, pun entirely intended, that even people who know nothing about numismatics and nothing about error coins will look at one and immediately sense that something extraordinary is happening, will immediately feel that this is not an ordinary object, will immediately understand on some instinctive level that they are holding something that should not exist. Now consider the sheer improbability of finding a coin that carries both a spectacular double die obverse and a broad strike simultaneously, because these two errors arise from entirely different causes and entirely different failure points in the minting process. The double die being a characteristic of the die itself that was prepared incorrectly during the hubbing process, and the broad strike being a result of collar failure or planchet escape during the actual striking of that individual coin. And the probability that a coin struck from a dramatically double die would also happen to be broad struck is vanishingly small. It requires not one, but two separate and independent failures of the production process to occur at precisely the same moment. And when you calculate the odds of that happening, the number you arrive at is so tiny, so astronomically small, that the existence of this coin begins to feel less like a manufacturing accident and more like a miracle, more like the universe specifically conspiring to create something that had no right to exist, but somehow does. And that sense of the miraculous, that feeling of impossible rarity, is exactly what drives collectors to pay $109 million to own it. And then there's the matter of the full steps designation, which on this particular coin transcends mere rarity and enters the realm of the genuinely supernatural. Because a full steps Jefferson nickel is already extraordinarily rare on a standard, perfectly struck coin, since achieving the complete, unbroken, clearly defined horizontal lines on the steps of Monticello requires a degree of die preparation and strike precision that most nickels simply never achieve. And when you consider that this particular coin was not only broad struck, which typically results in some degree of design weakness or softness due to the uncontrolled metal flow, but also shows a double die obverse with dramatic separation, which also typically introduces some degree of design distortion. The fact that the Monticello reverse on this coin shows all 6 steps in complete, pristine, sharp, undeniable full steps clarity is so improbable, so contrary to every reasonable expectation, that when PCGS certified this coin and confirmed the full steps designation alongside the double die and broad strike designations, there was a moment of collective disbelief in the grading room, a moment where experienced professionals who have seen hundreds of thousands of coins had to stop and simply stare, because what they were looking at had no precedent in their experience and no parallel in the published literature of numismatic errors. The grade itself, MS 68 full steps, is a number that deserves its own moment of quiet contemplation, because MS 68 on the Sheldon scale represent a coin that is essentially perfect, a coin that shows virtually no post-strike marks or handling damage of any kind under 50 times magnification. A coin that gleams with the full original luster of its production and shows every design detail in the sharpest possible relief, and the number of Jefferson Nickels from any year, from any mint, in any condition that have ever achieved a grade of MS 68 can be counted on the fingers of one hand, and the number of Jefferson Nickel error coins that have achieved MS 68 is even smaller, perhaps one, perhaps two, perhaps this one alone, and that grade on this coin is not just a number on a plastic slab. It is a declaration that what you are holding is the finest possible expression of an already impossible object, that the universe not only created something that should not exist, but then preserve it in a state of near absolute perfection for the lucky person who would eventually find it and recognize it for what it was. The discovery narrative of the 1997 P is one of those stories that gets told and retold at coin shows and in collector forums and in the hushed conversations that happen at the back of auction rooms, because this coin was found not by an expert, not by a dealer with decades of experience and a trained eye, but by someone who was barely beginning their journey into the world of numismatics. Someone who had recently become interested in coins and had been reading about mint errors and learning what to look for, and who had taken to buying rolls of uncirculated coins from the bank as a way of hunting for interesting specimens. And on an afternoon that they will never forget for as long as they live, while going through one of those bank rolls with a modest magnifying glass and a notebook full of handwritten notes about what to look for, they came across this nickel, this 1997 P nickel that looked slightly wrong, slightly wider than its siblings, with a portrait that seemed to shimmer and double when the light caught it at a certain angle. And the feeling that went through them in that moment, that electric full-body recognition of having found something extraordinary, is a feeling that cannot be adequately described in words. It can only be experienced in the months that followed, the submission to PCGS, the wait for the grade, the confirmation of every error designation, the announcement of the valuation, the realization that their life had just changed completely and permanently and irrevocably. That journey is the kind of journey that reminds us all why we look carefully at coins, why we bother to learn the difference between a regular strike and a broad strike, why we take the time to study double die varieties and full steps designations, because somewhere in the stream of billions of ordinary coins that flow through the American economy every single day, there are coins like this one waiting to be found, waiting for someone with the knowledge to recognize them and the courage to believe what they are seeing. The broader significance of the 1997 P. Jefferson Nickel in the history of American numismatics is difficult to overstate, because this coin does not just represent a great find or an impressive valuation. It represents a philosophical statement about the nature of value itself, about the gap between intrinsic worth and perceived worth, about the extraordinary power of rarity and condition and story to elevate an object beyond all rational expectation of what it should be worth. And the number $109 million is not just a price. It is a testament to the passion and the obsession and the deep, abiding love that the world's most serious collectors hold for these tiny, magnificent objects that contain within their small circumferences entire worlds of history and chance and human imperfection and mechanical failure. And that love, that passion, that obsession is what drives the numismatic market to produce valuations that seem impossible until you understand the full story behind them, at which point they seem not just possible, but inevitable. When you hold a Jefferson nickel in your hand today, when you pull one from your pocket or fish one out of the change dish by your front door, I want you to remember this coin. I want you to remember the 1997 P. Jefferson nickel at $109 million. And I want you to remember that it looks, to anyone who does not know what to look for, exactly like every other nickel in the pile. That its extraordinary value is completely invisible to the untrained eye that it gives away. None of its secrets at a casual glance. And that the difference between the person who spins it and the person who recognizes it is nothing more than knowledge, nothing more than awareness, nothing more than the decision to look carefully at the world instead of rushing past it. And that decision, that simple, powerful, life-changing decision to look carefully, is available to you right now, today, immediately, the moment you finish watching this video. So check your coins, weigh your nickels, look for the doubling in the portrait, examine those steps on Monticello, hold each one under a light and tilt it slowly and see if the design looks wider than it should, if the edges look softer than they should, if Jefferson's face seems to vibrate and double when the angle changes, because the next great discovery in American numismatics is out there. It is real, it is waiting, and everything standing between you and it is the knowledge you now have The awareness that was not there before you press play on this video. And that is the greatest gift this channel can give you. Not just the stories of coins already found, but the possibility of the coin you're going to find next. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for staying until the very end of this video, for giving every coin its moment, for understanding that the treasure is real, and the hunt is real, and the life-changing discovery is genuinely possible for anyone willing to pay attention. And we will see you in the very next video right here on the NUMIS Hunter.